It started as a joke, or at least that's what she told her friends. "Alexa, tell my husband he's disappointing," she said, laughing, while they all sat in the living room drinking wine. The device chirped back in its cheerful monotone. "Your husband is disappointing." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. At first, I shrugged it off. A stupid prank. A little humiliation packaged as humor. That's how small cracks start, in laughter. But when it became a morning ritual, when Alexa's robotic voice began to say it every day before I'd even had coffee, it stopped being funny. She thought I was overreacting. She said it was harmless, just her way of teasing. I told her to stop. She didn't. One morning, as she left for work, she turned back and said, "Don't take it so seriously. Alexa doesn't mean it." I smiled, nodded, and watched her leave. That's when I decided to reprogram Alexa. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. That night, while she was in the shower, I opened the Alexa app on my phone. It took less than a minute to change her command routine. I replaced her morning joke with something else, a simple script that would read aloud her latest text messages. I didn't have to hack anything, just logic. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed coffee, and waited. When she walked into the kitchen, still half asleep, Alexa's voice filled the silence. "New message from Derek. Last night was amazing." The cup slipped from her hand. Coffee splashed across the counter, running between her fingers. Her face drained of color as Alexa continued. "New message from Derek. You're addictive. Can't stop thinking about you." She froze, eyes wide, breath caught somewhere between denial and panic. I didn't say a word. I just watched. For months, she'd been feeding that machine phrases to humiliate me. Now it was feeding her the truth. She finally spoke, quietly, like someone confessing to herself. "It's not what it sounds like." I finished my coffee, set the cup in the sink, and said calmly, "It never is." Then I grabbed my keys and left the house, leaving Alexa's cheerful tone echoing behind me. As I stepped outside, I realized something. Alexa didn't just announce what was written in her phone. She announced the end of our marriage. And she did it without emotion, just perfect precision. When I left the house that morning, I didn't drive far, just enough to think. I pulled into a Dunkin' parking lot, sat there with the engine running, and stared at the steering wheel while Alexa's words replayed in my head. Last night was amazing. The tone was too bright, too polite, too detached from the damage it caused. Maybe that's what made it worse. Machines don't lie. They just repeat the truth that people hide in plain sight. For a few hours, I didn't call her. I didn't check her messages or the logs. I wanted to see what she would do when silence was her only company. Around noon, my phone lit up with her name. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "It's not what you think. We were just joking. Please come home." Each one shorter, more frantic. I watched them appear and disappear without replying. That's the thing about silence. It turns panic into confession faster than anger ever could. By the time I got back home, the house was spotless. The counter where she'd spilled coffee was scrubbed clean, the smell of bleach sharp in the air. She was sitting at the kitchen table, phone in hand, trying to look calm. She said she could explain. I told her she didn't need to. I already had the proof. She asked how I'd found out. I pointed at the speaker sitting innocently on the counter. She stared at it like it was alive. Her first excuse was that Derek was just a friend from work. Her second was that it was emotional, not physical. Her third was silence, the kind that fills a room when words start suffocating instead of saving. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched her realize that for the first time, she didn't control the narrative. Later that evening, she unplugged the Alexa and threw it in the trash. I didn't stop her. It wasn't the device that betrayed her. It was her own need to humiliate what she couldn't respect. That night, I packed a bag. Not in anger, not even in heartbreak. Just in clarity. She asked where I was going. I said, "Someplace quiet." She reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. She whispered that we could fix it. I told her, "You can't fix what you broadcast to the world." Then I walked out. As the door closed behind me, I realized Alexa had done something I never could. Cut through her lies with perfect, emotionless honesty. I didn't go far that night. I checked into a Holiday Inn off the interstate, the kind of place that smells like air conditioning and carpet cleaner. The woman at the front desk asked if it was business or pleasure. I told her it was neither. She smiled politely, not realizing that answer said everything. When I got to the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. 17 unread messages. I didn't open a single one. I turned the phone face down, turned off the lights, and listened to the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence she used to occupy. That sound was more honest than anything she'd said in months. The next morning, I checked my email before heading out. There was one from her, subject line, "Please." I opened it. She wrote that it wasn't serious, that Derek was just a distraction, that it had started during one of our quiet phases. I read that part twice. Quiet phases. That's what she called the times I stopped fighting back. The times I chose calm over chaos. She thought silence was distance. I'd learned it was survival. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my own address and archived it. Evidence, not anger. That afternoon, I met with my attorney, a woman named Carla who spoke directly, no sympathy, no small talk. She said what I already knew. Emotional betrayal is still betrayal. We discussed next steps. Everything was clean, methodical, precise. There's a strange peace and structure after months of disorder. Later that night, I drove back to the house to collect the rest of my things. Her car wasn't there. Inside, everything looked untouched. The Alexa was gone, replaced by a vase of fake flowers in the same spot. I almost laughed. She'd tried to erase the evidence instead of facing it. The air smelled like lavender spray and denial. In the bedroom, I found a note on my pillow. It said, "If you walk away now, you'll regret it." I folded it once and left it on the nightstand. Regret isn't born from leaving. It's born from staying too long. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't feel anger or grief, just a quiet clarity. She had spent months using a machine to make me feel small. Now, her own words, her own joke, had made her smaller than she ever imagined. Alexa hadn't destroyed us. She'd just told the truth neither of us had the courage to say out loud. By the third day, I stopped checking my phone entirely. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to. The silence between us had shifted from heavy to clean. Every unanswered message was another brick sealing the wall she'd built herself. I didn't hate her. I didn't even pity her. I just didn't feel her anymore. That morning, I drove to the old park near our neighborhood. We used to walk there on weekends, back when laughter came naturally. I sat on a bench with a Starbucks cup warming my hands and watched the same path we used to take together. She'd walk ahead, always talking, always trying to fill every moment with noise. I used to think her constant words were love. Now I saw them for what they were, distraction. A fear of silence because it revealed too much. When I got back to the apartment, there was a box at the door. No return address, just my name in her handwriting. I brought it inside but didn't open it right away. I poured a drink, sat down, and waited until the quiet stretched just long enough to make it feel deliberate. Then I lifted the lid. Inside were a few of my things, a watch, an old hoodie, and a printed photo of us from years ago. On the back, she'd written, "If I'd known you'd leave this quietly, I would have listened louder." I set the photo on the counter. For the first time, I felt something almost close to sadness, but it wasn't for her. It was for the version of me that had once believed noise meant care. That man had waited for someone to notice his silence. The one sitting here now didn't need to be heard. That evening, I got a call from a mutual friend, Mark. He said she'd told everyone it was a misunderstanding, that I'd overreacted, that Alexa had exaggerated what she'd said. I didn't bother correcting him. Let her keep the story if it gave her comfort. Some truths don't need an audience. After the call, I looked around my new place, the quiet hum of the fridge, the soft flicker of city light through the blinds. It felt solid, like the beginning of something steady. I thought about Alexa, that cheerful voice delivering betrayal without emotion. It made me realize something profound. Honesty doesn't always sound human. Sometimes it's the silence after everything fake has been spoken. A week passed before she showed up at my door. I knew she would eventually. The knock was soft, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she had the right to be there. I opened it and found her standing in the hallway, hair messy, eyes red, holding the same Alexa box she'd thrown away. She said she wanted to talk. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't shut the door either. She said she hadn't been sleeping. That every morning, the silence in the house felt louder than the voice that used to mock me. She said she didn't realize how much noise she needed to feel alive until it was gone. I told her I understood. That's what people like her fear most, stillness. It leaves no one to perform for. She tried to hand me the Alexa, said she wanted to give it back, like it would fix something symbolic between us. I looked at the box and told her it wasn't the machine that broke us. It just revealed who we already were. She asked if I hated her. I said no. Hate is just another form of attention, and I was done giving her any. She stood there a long time, searching for the man who used to fill her silence with reassurance. But I wasn't him anymore. Finally, she said she was sorry. Not for what she did, but for what she lost. There's a difference. I nodded once. No lecture. No forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Sometimes the most painful thing you can give someone is closure without comfort. Before she turned to leave, she asked one more question. Do you ever think about what we could have been if none of this happened? I told her. That's the problem. It did happen. She looked down, whispered something I couldn't catch, then walked away. The hallway swallowed her footsteps until there was nothing left but quiet. I stood there for a moment, looking at the Alexa box in my hands. Then I carried it to the trash chute and let it drop. The sound of it hitting the bottom was small, final. When I closed the apartment door, I realized something simple but absolute. She used that machine to make me feel replaceable, and in doing so, she replaced herself. The silence that followed didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. After that night, she didn't come back. But she didn't disappear either. Every few days, I'd see traces of her online. Posts about self-growth, healing, finding peace. All the same quotes she used to roll her eyes at. I wasn't angry. Everyone needs a story to tell themselves when they're the villain in someone else's version. Hers was that she was working on herself. Mine was that I'd stopped waiting for her to notice I was gone. Work became easier. Sleep came without effort. I stopped checking my phone before bed, stopped rehearsing old arguments in my head. Sometimes I'd catch a scent that reminded me of her. Vanilla lotion, the kind she bought from Bath & Body Works. And for a split second, the old reflex to forgive flickered. But forgiveness isn't about kindness. It's about release. And I'd already done that. One night, while I was cleaning out my inbox, I found an old message thread between us. It started years ago, back when things were still good. Her first text had said, "Promise me you'll never shut me out." I stared at it for a long time, realizing how ironic it was. She'd spent years teaching me that silence was power, and then blamed me for learning it too well. That weekend, I went back to our old neighborhood to clear out the last storage unit under our names. The air was colder, sharper. As I sorted through the boxes, I found one labeled Home Stuff. Inside were a few photo frames, an old Bluetooth speaker, and the instruction manual for the Alexa. I almost laughed. The manual was pristine, never opened. Like everything else in that house, she'd wanted the image of control, not the understanding of it. When I left the storage unit, I sat in the car for a moment before driving off. The city lights blurred in the reflection of the windshield, and for a brief second, I thought about what it would feel like to start over completely. Not with someone new, just with myself. No noise. No correction. No audience. That night, back in my apartment, I poured a drink and looked around. The silence didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt alive. It had rhythm, breath, meaning. She once used it to make me question my worth. Now it was proof I'd finally remembered it. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just replaces everything that doesn't belong. It was about a month later when I ran into Derek, the man whose name Alexa had said out loud that morning. It happened by accident. I was standing in line at a hardware store, holding a pack of batteries and a new lock for my door, when I heard someone say my name. I turned and saw him. Same smug look, same sharp haircut, but something in his eyes had changed. Guilt, maybe. Or just fear of what silence does when you can't fill it with excuses. He said he didn't know what she'd told me. I told him I didn't care. But he kept talking, like he needed to be forgiven to survive. He said it wasn't serious, that she'd told him we were done long before that morning. I didn't respond. He filled the silence with more words, trying to justify what neither of them could take back. Then he said something that stopped me. "She thought you'd fight for her." I looked at him, calm, steady. "No," I said. "She thought I'd stay the way she left me." Then I paid for my things and walked out, leaving him standing there with his mouth half open, like he'd just realized he wasn't part of the story anymore. Back home, I replaced the lock and threw the old one in the trash. It felt symbolic, closing the last open door between who I was and who I'd become. The apartment felt cleaner, quieter, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything. I poured a glass of whiskey, leaned against the counter, and looked out at the city lights flickering like small, silent witnesses. Later that night, a text came through. It was her again. Just one line. I saw you today. I didn't know what she meant until she sent a photo. Me, outside the hardware store. She'd been there too, sitting in her car. Watching. Waiting. I stared at the screen, then turned the phone face down on the table. There was no fear, no curiosity, just an odd sense of inevitability. She wasn't trying to talk. She was trying to haunt the space she used to own. But ghosts only linger where they're invited. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone, finished my drink, and stood in the dark for a while. The silence wasn't just peace anymore, it was armor. And I wasn't giving it up for anyone. The message stayed unread for days. I didn't delete it. I just left it there, like a framed photograph of something that didn't matter anymore. But she kept sending more, small fragments that didn't ask for answers. I drove by your place. I thought about you today. Do you ever wonder if we could have fixed it? Each one arrived later than the last, like she was slowly realizing she was talking to a wall. One night, around midnight, I saw her name light up again. This time, it was a voicemail. Her voice sounded fragile, almost rehearsed. She said she missed me, that Derek was gone, that she'd been trying to become someone I could love again. She said silence used to scare her, but now it followed her everywhere. The irony didn't escape me. She'd spent years trying to silence me, and now she was drowning in her own quiet. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to echo. The next morning, I went for a run along the river. The air was sharp and clean, the sun breaking through the fog like something earned, not given. I stopped halfway across the bridge and looked down at the water. For months, I'd been letting her voice linger in the corners of my mind. That morning, it finally felt like it was fading. When I got back home, I saw the Alexa instruction manual still on my desk. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe as a reminder. I flipped it open and read the first line. To activate, use the wake word. I laughed quietly to myself. That's what she had done for years, used words to wake something in me. The difference now was simple. I didn't respond to her voice anymore. That evening, I met an old friend for dinner, someone who'd seen me at my worst. He said I looked different, calmer. I told him silence had a way of rebuilding things. He raised an eyebrow and said, or maybe it just shows who you really are when no one's talking. When I got home, I deleted all her messages. Not out of anger, out of mercy. For both of us. Then I turned off the lights, stood in the dark, and listened to the stillness that once used to hurt. It didn't anymore. It sounded like peace finally learning my name. It was early spring when I saw her again, by complete accident. I was in line at a Target, picking up a few things, when I caught her reflection in the glass doors at the entrance. She was standing near the checkout, holding a basket, looking thinner, quieter, almost unfamiliar. For a second, I thought about walking out. But something in me wanted to see what time had done to her. She didn't notice me at first. Then her eyes caught mine, and everything froze. No words, no anger, just the long silence between two people who once knew each other better than anyone and now didn't even share a language. She walked over slowly, like she was afraid I'd vanish if she moved too fast. She said my name like it hurt to say it. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. She said she'd been doing better. That therapy helped. That she'd learned not everything can be fixed with talking. I almost laughed at that. She noticed, and her voice trembled when she said, I guess you finally got what you wanted. Silence. I looked at her, calm, steady. No, I said. I got what I needed. Distance. Her face fell a little, but she nodded. There was no scene, no plea, just a quiet acceptance that she had finally lost something she couldn't buy back with words. Before she left, she asked if I ever thought about reconnecting, even as friends. I told her the truth, that I didn't think about her at all. It wasn't cruelty, it was reality. She used to fill every space with sound, with control, with reminders of herself. Now, standing there, she was just another person passing through a store, buying things to make an empty house feel less hollow. As she turned to go, I saw her glance at a display of echoed dots near the register. She froze for half a second, then walked past them like they were ghosts. Maybe they were. I paid for my things and stepped outside. The air smelled of rain. For the first time, the world felt quiet in a way that wasn't empty. It was free. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or revenge. They just end when the noise finally stops, and you realize silence was never the absence of love. It was the proof that you survived it. It's strange how endings never happen when you expect them to. They don't come with grand gestures or final words. They arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. A week after I saw her at Target, she sent one last email. The subject line was blank. Inside, there were only 4 words. You were right. Silence. No apology. No explanation. Just that. I read it once, closed the laptop, and knew it was over. Not the kind of over that aches, the kind that releases. I didn't reply. Instead, I went for a drive out past the city limits, the same direction I'd taken the morning I left her. The road was empty, washed clean by last night's rain. The sky had that pale blue stillness that only happens before spring fully arrives. I rolled down the windows and let the wind in, cold and sharp, but honest. At a red light, I thought about everything. The Alexa, the laughter, the morning the truth spilled into the kitchen like a confession she never meant to give. Every moment had been recorded in the silence that followed, and somehow that silence had become my teacher. It showed me that not reacting isn't weakness, it's mastery. That sometimes, the most powerful move isn't to destroy what broke you, but to step back and let it collapse on its own. When I got home, I made coffee, turned on some low music, and opened the blinds. The light filled the room, soft and calm. For the first time, I realized I wasn't waiting for peace anymore. I was living in it. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old photos, and deleted them all without hesitation. The memories didn't hurt anymore. They were just stories I'd outgrown. Before bed, I walked to the window and looked out at the city glowing below. Somewhere out there, she was learning to live with the echo of her own voice. Maybe she finally understood what I had tried to show her. That silence isn't punishment, it's consequence. I whispered something to myself, barely loud enough to hear. I didn't leave to forget you. I left to remember myself. Then I turned off the lights, letting the room fade into quiet. The same quiet she once mocked. The same quiet that had rebuilt me. That's the thing about silence. Once you learn its language, you stop needing anyone else to translate peace for you.